Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a great day and hope we can add on to it and make it even better. So I'd just like to start off by saying a special prayer for everybody in the Houston area. My son and his wife and 5 children live in San Antonio. Fortunately, they escaped real disaster. But Houston, I have quite a few friends in Houston as well, rabbis, Chabad rabbis who work very hard on behalf of the Jewish community. So they're really going through a very rough time. And I think it's important for all of us to have them in mind, do what we can to try to help them out, maybe give charity in order to be able to help them get back on their feet. There's a lot of work that needs to be done there, and we are all responsible one for the other. So let's see what we can do to try to help them out when the opportunity arises. So continuing in our journey into Maimonides' 13 Principles of Faith, we're up to the fourth principle. And the fourth principle of faith is about time, that God is eternal. The belief in that God has eternity. And it's a very interesting statement, very simple. That's the whole fourth principle of the 13 principles. But as we can see, that Maimonides is really looking to create the foundation of our belief. He's not going to the specifics of do this mitzvah, do that mitzvah, believe in this, believe in that. He wants to really help us round out an understanding of what does it mean to have a Jewish belief system. Specifically, of course, as we are starting off, the first 5 or 6 principles deal mostly with God. But we'll be getting into other things as well concerning Jewish practice and the prophets and so forth and so on. And towards the end, we'll get to Mashiach and even to resurrection of the dead, which is the last of the 13 principles, which is very interesting why that of all should be one of the big 13. So getting back to God's eternity. We know that when we say Adon Olam, we say V'hu hoya, V'hu ha'aveh, V'hu yiyeh, V'sifara. God was, God is, and God always will be. In other words, there's an aspect that God reaches, that God in his essence embodies, which is higher than time. In fact, if we look at the beginning of Genesis, the very first word of the whole Torah is Bereshis, in the beginning. There are many different commentaries as far as exactly what that means. But in general, if you think about it, in order to create a world, to create a universe, to create anything, there has to be the existence of time. There has to be a before and after. There has to be the ability to make a change from one state to another state, which if you're going to be making that change from one state to another state, there has to be a time frame that means before and after. So as a result, we see that God had to create, or didn't have to, but did create time as part of the creation itself. And in fact, it was the very first thing that God created. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to back this up with scientific data, but I've heard from a number of sources that a good Jew by the name of Einstein really proved scientifically that time is a fourth dimension. It's really part and parcel of the creation itself. That things can't really exist without time, because if they just exist, in other words, if you have creation and there's no such thing as time, then everything just stays in its place the way it is. There's no such thing as growth, no such thing as change, no such thing as getting better, because it's all stuck in the present. So unless you have a past and a present and a future, you can't really think in terms of there being any existence whatsoever. So when we say that God embodies eternity, it means that God in his essence, before he created the world, Adon Olam Hashem Malach B'Terem Kol Yisur Nivra, before Hashem brought the world into being, there was no need for time. There was no change. There was no such thing as getting better or getting worse. It just was. There was a state of being, that God existed forever and ever, whatever forever and ever means, which are these concepts. You get to a certain point, they're really so far beyond our comprehension, because you're talking about the age-old question of, well, if God created the world, so who created God? But for all practical purposes, whoever would have created God would be the real God. And the other thing that God created, it wouldn't really be God. So there's some beginning to all this, which is even, according to this principle of faith with the Maimonides, is a beginning of all being, of all time, of all existence. That's a heavy thing for us to really think about, that such a thing is even possible. But once we come to accept that, you know what, there's something beneath the surface of this world, this physical world, there's something beneath the surface of time and space, and that is some spiritual force, some entity, whatever we're going to call it, whatever name we're going to give it, but it's got an essence which is above time. Now, I bet you if you stopped and just really, really thinking to yourself, there's a part of us also, since we have a soul, and that soul we believe comes from God, we have a part of us also that's above time. We have a part of us that really connects in a way where time doesn't affect who we are and what we are, where we have an essence that is, in fact, very, very holy. So that's the end of the fourth of the 13 principles of faith. So we're going to continue tomorrow with the fifth of the principles of faith, and look forward to seeing you then.